Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation, man. We are at the end of a year. We're also at the end of a half. I'm Phil Dark, your host. With me is my co-host, Paul Jobson, and we are so excited. Looking back on this year was just amazing. We're going to do a little bit of that in this episode. We're also going to look back at the first half of season 10, which is crazy. Hopefully you had a great Christmas. This is coming out just after Christmas. Hopefully that was an amazing Christmas with friends and families. Paul, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm with you on kind of looking back on this year and just, you think about it like, yes, we have some great guests, but when you go back and actually look, there's some that you kind of forget about that were during the year and you just like, oh my gosh, like what an incredible year we had with guests and just a lot of things that I definitely learned through this year. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. And I think the day of this release is birthday of my number two in the household. He turns 12 on the
Awesome.
release date of this. So always a fun time and,
You want to sing
celebrating
happy birthday right
birthdays.
now? And you can
No,
just share that with him?
I don't think he listens to the show.
Okay. Okay.
So
Probably not.
sorry,
Probably not.
but
We
what
know
the
Marcy
crazy
doesn't.
part,
We've established that. So
she's actually, commenting on how good her episode was for sure.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. But we celebrate, there's six in our family. We celebrate five of the six between November and February. And then we have an outlier in May. So this is Thanksgiving, Christmas, and five birthdays in a few months here. So it's a really fun and very expensive time of year on the Jobson house.
Yes. Yes, of course. And you have to figure out how do we do Christmas and then have a separate special celebration that is not just wrapped up into Christmas. So yeah, one of my good friends has his birthday on Christmas Eve. So
Mm.
that's always an interesting conversation of how that is done in their household. So I think they go to like noon, it's his birthday, and then afternoon it's Christmas Eve. So, things that you gotta do, which is great. And no doubt you guys are doing that there. But dude, we got a lot to cover in this episode. I
Yeah,
I, I
man.
love our banter and we'll do that off the air. I'm sure people will just be like, well, how are we gonna survive without that? But I think they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I just want to get right into it, man. We
Let's do
had
it.
this half. I mean, this season 10. Man, we kicked it off with Dan Russell, man. Just it's always good to kick it off with a Brit, but also Liverpool scout. He's doing the Darius stuff, and I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm still not quite sure. Sean Smithson, Kevin O'Brien, and then your favorite guest ever,
Ever.
Marcy. And man, what a half, dude. I'm just gonna throw it out to you. What were some things that jumped out to you, whether it's theme of the 4 or just different things about each guest that you have?
Yeah. You know, I think what Daniel Russell presented was really, sometimes we have episodes where we'll dive into things that we all kind of have knowledge base of and we can talk through and have opinions. I think Daniel was a great guest because there's a lot of things he's doing that was just new information, like things that I didn't know, whether if I knew that was going on or not. I didn't know a lot about it and learned a ton about kind of some new things that he's doing. And really, obviously the title of his had to do with networking and how he kind of got to where he was. To me, always the story of how somebody gets to where they are is really sometimes the most intriguing piece. And he has a great story. And
Yeah.
he's really a young guy. And I'm curious to see how he's, going to continue to grow and network his way into whatever's next. But he was a great, that piece of him was really cool because it was something unique to me that I didn't really have not a lot of knowledge
Yeah.
of. I don't know if you want to just start with one at a time, or I could
Yeah,
dive
yeah,
through all of them. But like, I'm
I
just thought
do
about
wanna
him.
say yeah, I also wanna just say, when I talk about the year and stuff, we're gonna get into just so you guys know what's coming your way this episode. We're talking about these episodes, but then we're gonna do our top 3 episodes of the year or so. I say or so because it may be like we have an honorable mention or something. And then we'll get into books that were the best books slash, documentaries, movies that we saw this year. And so you definitely wanna wait for that because there's some super, super good resources there that I no doubt you're gonna they might even be like post-Christmas gifts you can give people. So it would've been nice to be our like, the How Soccer Explains Leadership gift guide, maybe that
Uh,
would've gotten more downloads. We gotta think
Next
about that
year.
for next year. Next year,
Next
we'll
year.
figure that out. We can even have a catalog that we can put out or something, you never know.
Mhm.
It could be amazing. But we're gonna do that towards the end, but let's just go one by one here. So, yeah, I
Okay.
agree with that with Dan. It was cool. It was just a fun conversation, first of all. Lots of laughter. It's just, similar. He's a buddy of Phil Smith, so something's gonna go, a little different than you thought. But, like you said, the story of just it never ceases to amaze me how people get to where they are, and how it's just, things that conversations you have that you never know where it's gonna go. Or, I mean, heck, this podcast is one of those things, it's just
Yeah.
it started because I was just talking to a buddy and like, "Hey, let's just get on and talk about Manchester United stuff." And boy, I'm glad it took a turn on that, especially lately with United. That would have been, depressing conversations, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful where it turned and where it's gone, but the people that we get to talk with, and who knows what's gonna happen from a lot of those. But also just, learning about the scouting aspect of it, the app. What I love about what him is he's really about helping people in different ways, and all the things that he's doing have that similar thread of how do we get people to kinda achieve their goals and their dreams, and how can we help them take that next step, and what does that look like? So, definitely go back and check out that episode. We're gonna go a little quicker on each episode here because we do have a lot to cover on this, but I would say definitely that episode was one that, like you said, I learned a lot, but also just was encouraged by his story, and how he's just being able to go one thing to the next to be able to help people get where they wanna go, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that other
And
centric
I
there.
Yeah, and before we move on to past them, and just to kind of throw out something for people to kind of pay attention to in that episode, there's a little piece in there where he talks about how he onboarded with one of the organizations he works with. Now he kind of latched himself on to the people who were really successful in that organization and
Yes.
just was a sponge. And I
Yes.
took that because obviously I'm transitioning into something kind of new, with SRUSA, and kind of have done the same thing. And that was, something I think we don't think a whole lot about. It sounds like common sense, but it's like, I'm going to do it on my own. I can power through this. But like, man,
Yeah.
latch yourself on to those that are having success. And so focus in on that when you go back to listen to that episode. It was encouraging and helpful.
Yeah, it was. That was super good. So the next is Sean Smithson. We got Sean, good friend with FCA Sports and the executive vice president of club sports, and he's doing some really, really cool stuff. I get to be in a Bible study with him every Thursday with the faith-based coaches, the United Soccer coaches, and that's just been a great way to get to know people and go deeper. But the title of that is Eternal Perspective, and I think a lot of what Sean talked about in there is that, what really matters, right? And what is that eternal perspective that we can have as we're going through different things that we do? He talked about making disciples using soccer. He talked about, life, uh, just the calling that he has on his life. And so, what do you think of that conversation with Sean?
Always an encouraging conversation, and just, again, another person who's looking to serve others through what they do. And, always cool to hear their stories, and, a great story in there about how he tried to call a timeout during a soccer match, as he was
Yes.
learning the ropes of the game. But yeah, just, again, just a really encouraging conversation with somebody who's serving a lot of people through what he's doing, and just the aspects of FCA. And what's funny is I don't know that we spent a ton of time highlighting FCA as an organization through his interview, but it just kind of goes to show that a lot of these people that we interview, they're doing things because they love it, and they're passionate about it, and their values align so closely with the organization that it's not about the organization, right? It's just about, like,
Yep.
especially for him, what God's calling him to do. There just happens to be an organization that helps, you know, make that happen. So I think we got through that episode too. Like, oh my gosh, I don't think we highlighted FCA much at all. And it hit
Yeah.
me. I was like, well, it never is about the organization. It's about
Right.
how God's using them. So that hit me through that as well.
Yeah, it's funny. There were great stories. That one about calling timeout, the one
Yeah.
with Bernard Longer, and that idea of, they lied to me. right? Remember
Yeah.
that? Where, like, he
Yeah.
won the Masters and he had won other tournaments, and he's like, "They lied to me," and he, was able to share that with the kids at the nationals to be able to say, "Hey, guys, the trophy's great, but it's not about the trophy, right? Like, it can't be about the trophy. There's so much more to life." And then remember you can't forget Jello night, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so,
It's not what you're
he
thinking,
shared a
people. If you
story
haven't
about
heard the episode, yeah, if you haven't heard the episode, it's not that kind of Jello night. So
go
go
listen
listen
and
to it.
find out the FCA or he was a youth leader version
Mhm.
of Jello night. Definitely go check it out. It not definitely not what you think, and it's actually could be quite violent. So we're gonna leave it at that, and we're gonna move on because I love that interview, and there were some great poignant stories that you will remember, and they hopefully will be able to impact your life, your coaching, your home, everywhere that you're leading. The next was Kevin O'Brien, your bud, KP or OB. I've
OB.
heard different OB, okay, yeah, but his email is KP O'Brien, but yeah, but OB is what, I'm learning is the jargon, that's the
Yes.
locals. That's what, the
I
insiders
that's
are
that's
calling
what
him.
I knew that's what I knew of his name before I actually knew his name. So he's
Yes,
always been OB to me. And if I hear
yes.
Kevin, I'm like, who's Kevin? But
Who's
yeah, Kevin
that?
Kevin O'Brien. I think I even called him Kevin on the podcast. It kind of threw me off. Like, wait a
It
minute,
was
who's
weird.
Kevin?
Yeah.
But yeah, great. I mean,
Didn't last long. You used OB most of it,
yeah,
so
yeah. But yeah, I love having people that, I mean, you're probably the same. Love having people that we know and on the podcast because there's always things that you still continue to learn about them and their story that maybe you didn't know, or just really allowing them to share, what they do and how they do it. And OB is, I think one of the best in what he does and how he does it at a Christian university. There obviously are others, but Kevin does such a great job. In fact, just actually helped place a kid at his college the other day who's just a perfect fit for OB and his program, and how they go about things. But his story of how he got to where he is, a great story and a great process that I think young coaches can learn from. Again, as we talk about, there's not one path to being a head coach. We talk a lot about, what are we actually coaching for? What's kind of the end game? We talk about that similar to what we talked about in the other episodes of, the empty cup. What are you playing for? Are you playing for a national championship? And when you get there, what's at the end of it? Again, that's another common theme through this half of the season is that part of it, right? Like,
yeah.
what are you playing for? What's the deeper root of that? And of course, Kevin and I have overlap where he was an assistant for a season with me when I was at Presbyterian College. That's how we met. And he's nice enough not to get into how bad of a soccer player I was during that time, but how he destroyed us on the pitch as he would jump in to play. But yeah, I thought I'd like to hear what your thoughts on that. I mean, I know him, so
Yeah,
my stuff kind of overlaps with what I know and what we talked about, but love to hear your thoughts on him in that
for
conversation.
sure. Yeah, it's interesting. It was interesting. You mentioned that briefly, but he was very, very, short on the answer about coaching you. So I'm thinking either, he was holding back because it was, not, appropriate for, young ears, or you didn't make much of an impression on him. I don't know which it was. It was, it couldn't have been the latter. It had to be the
Yeah,
first
I don't
part.
think I made a big impression on OB until later in life. Where he's like, "Oh, you went to Presbyterian? Oh, you were on that team? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." I was like, "Yeah, you remember so and so?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. You were
Yeah,
on
that
that
guy was
team?" So,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, for
totally,
sure.
totally.
No, but n I just loved the overarching just feeling you get with some people, talking with some people, like, this is the real deal, and that what he's saying isn't just words coming out of someone's mouth, it's something he really believes, right? It's kinda that idea of when Steve Jobs would be marketing the computer, it was about the why, like, he shared what he really wanted in a product, so to speak. And I just hear from Kevin, it's like this guy believes what he's saying. He's living it out, being able to watch him coach and seeing how he was, spending time after the game one on one with different players, talking with different people, obviously as the whole as well. Like that he is a guy who is living out a calling on his life to coach and to do ministry through sport and to make disciples through this game, and even as he was talking about to be able to to see it as a ministry and a Division I program to be able to do that and be successful in it is amazing. And like I said during that interview, like it's you want to be the coach that other people would want their kids to play for, right? Like
Right.
other coaches would want their kids to play for, especially. And that's what I really felt with him and in that conversation and what I've heard about him as well. And so to be able to have that conversation and kind of have it confirm what I'd heard from so many people, and I haven't heard a single person say something negative about the guy, and from different areas too, in Nashville and other parts. So that was something that really shone through in that interview. We also talked about the fact that bison and bisons is both, grammatically correct as the plural form
We
of
did.
bison. So that was something that was a very important thing that we, settled here on this
Yeah.
show as well.
Well,
So,
we always talk about how much we learn on these
yes,
shows, and that's another thing that, we definitely learned that I would have never even known to consider,
you
or
didn't
probably
even
even
know it was a
notice.
thought. You didn't even know
Nope.
it was a
Mm-mm.
thing.
I
Yeah.
didn't. I didn't.
So, and Kevin didn't either, apparently. He just accepted it. He didn't even
Yeah.
question or
I
challenge
think
the
I think he
grammar.
realized that it was above his pay grade, I think is what he said. That, "Hey, I just
That
go
is
along with
true.
it. I'm told that's
That's
what it
true.
is." And that is a smart coach, right?
That
To
is
know your
true.
lane,
Yeah, you don't
and stay in it, you
it
know?
would have had to change the scoreboard. I mean, there would have been all kinds of massive changes that they would have had to do, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, marketing changes. Yeah, it would have been
Yeah.
bad. So that was definitely, not the most poignant moment of the conversation, but it was something. So, yeah,
Something.
I just think overall, there were so many great leadership lessons in there, even talking about, when he was with the Charlotte Eagles, talking about coming up through the ranks and
Mhm.
learning from different people as an assistant and, as under some amazing coaches that he got to coach with, and be a part of his life and to just glean from that, as you talked about, with Sean and with Dan, just learning. That was another theme. I mean, I think we had that theme of the empty cup, so to speak, of the championships, the emptiness of
Yeah.
it, but also that idea of learning from those that you are coaching with or working with in different environments. So, loved that conversation. Definitely go back and listen to that, folks. If you've already heard it, go back and learn again. But if you haven't, definitely go back, check that out. All right. So, you've been waiting for this one. You're like, "Can we just get to Marcy?"
Yeah, I
Um,
teed this up. I teed this up to
yeah.
be the last one of this of
Yes.
the thing, so, yeah. Well, that
So that was you're like, she actually said yes like 10 months ago, but you're like, "I want it to be the last interview of the year
Yeah,
because and the last interview of the half." So that
yeah,
was well played, sir.
yeah.
So, I'll start because
Okay,
you'll just take the next hour and a half and talk about your beautiful bride. But
totally. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it all.
so with Marcy, I mean, it's not gonna surprise you. The thing that sticks out of the whole interview is her unorthodox bucket list item, which
Yeah.
I just still am like, I don't get. Like, and yesterday, just to make sure, like, that I wasn't missing something, I did go for a run, and I reminded
Mm,
myself once again that I'm not only not made to run, but I really don't ever wanna do that again. But her bucket list item, man, it has to do with running, and it has to do with the desert. Go listen to it, and no doubt you'll be blown away by that just alone. But yeah, I really not surprising, it was cool because you obviously know all this stuff about Marcy, but I know we've hung out a few times, right? Like you talk about her all the time, obviously, like we know that. But to hear kind of what drives her, to hear what's behind that intensity that I have seen her coaching and playing. So to see kind of what comes under that, her siblings, to have first of all, that all her siblings have an M to start their name was impressive when there's 8 of them. That's impressive. That's some creativity in parenting. I imagine it was confusing as all get out as well, but that was just hearing about what shaped her, the different people that shaped her. The thing I loved about it was her coach that she kept going back to was her childhood coach, who coached her from, during her 10-year-old up in her youth. I think that's so encouraging for youth coaches out there to hear that not just, "Oh, yeah, it was cool, kinda got me started," but, like, that's what taught me about how to coach. That's what taught me about who I am as a player and how I can blend faith in my coaching, and there's few who do it better than Marcy, I think, out there, or maybe, I mean, she's up there with as far as that integrating faith into coaching, and then now taking it to Warrior Way and being able to coach not only the kids, but going down to Guatemala and hearing that story about the little girls, but also the grown men and pros, and, like,
Mhm.
that respect that she can garner because, again, she's the real deal. Again, that common theme of when you are the real deal, that shines through. She said what one guy called her, like, sweetie or honey or something on the
Right.
way out to the field, like, but that doesn't fade, like, it's just like, "No, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do what I'm called to do and let the chips fall where they may," right? And to even hear how I loved hearing that, how you guys are a team, and even when she stepped back from the head coaching gig to the assistant to kind
Mhm.
of, as I said, the unpaid consultant,
Mhm.
um, that she was always part of that. And I love that. I just loved seeing that with you and her and the interaction. I loved seeing you dote on her. I loved seeing you like, "Oh, but you gotta share this part of it too, because that was really cool." And, I actually went home, I'm like, "Becca, we gotta get you on the show. That was super cool." She's like, "What would I
Yes.
say?" I'm like, "You'd be amazing. It'd be incredible," and, we had another PE teacher at one point, right? But to be able to do that, I think it was a special moment of the show to be able to watch that with you 2 interacting, where I kinda got to moderate that conversation, it was fun. It was cool.
Yeah, it was fun to have her on, obviously, selfishly, but I can't, I've wanted her on for a long time. So have you. I know she's wanted to do it, but finally it worked out schedule wise to get her to sit down and do it. And I just think she has so much wisdom to share and just has so many great experiences and just has a way that God's gifted her to share her experiences with others that she just does in a way that not many people can. And, you know, even to her training the men's team in Guatemala, a way of doing things that really I think only she can do, that God's gifted her with. And, talking about her bucket list item that's in the show. I've always said there's a difference between the good athletes, the great athletes, and the elite
Yes.
athletes. And the elite athletes they teeter on the edge of crazy. And
Uh-huh.
that bucket list item will support that theory of mine that the elite athletes teeter on the edge of crazy. And that's what drives them to an elite level
Right.
because they're willing to take chances to do kind of elite things that are a little bit out there, take chances they're not crazy, they're not out there, they're measured, but their measurements are willing to take it to a small a tinier degree than most of us. We want that margin and that support of safety. And I would take that into a lot of the decisions that she helps me make too. And I think it's always fun when we get to talk to elite athletes. And we have one at the beginning of 2024 we'll talk to as well. Teaser for her. But
Yep.
that always just stands out to me when I have those opportunities. And so it's good to have her on to be able to share that and what she's doing and what God's blessed her with through her ministry and family.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, folks, go back and listen to those episodes. As you said, that you teased, that was good because that was a good preview into the next half. We have the next interview we've already done, and it is another elite athlete, and it is another elite athlete that has some, crazy things that she did and has done and is doing that definitely are. And you say teeter on the side of crazy. Sometimes it goes over the line. I
Yes.
think, at least of my definition, but people do things for fun that would be, I think, torture for me.
Yes.
So,
Agreed.
and that just says how we're all wired very differently, and we're made to do different things too. So that's a good message there too. So, okay, we are gonna shift gears now. So that was the halftime show portion of this show. Now we're going into the end of 2023. This year we had over 10,000 listeners in over think it was 68
Wow.
countries, something like that. So I guess over
Wow.
67 countries because it was 68 countries.
There you go.
Which is, a lot of those have won, but still, you could shout out to like,
Counts.
Senegal and, Zambia. But it's pretty amazing the reach,
Yeah.
and fact that we have 100 and what is this? 139? No, 135. This 135th episode, like crazy. 10 seasons, crazy. The people we've been able to get on, which we're gonna get into a minute with just our top 3 when you say that, and just even those last 4 we talked about, like, people from all over the world who are doing incredible things, to have national championship coaches on here, to have people who are, scouting for Premier League teams, to have people on here who have been elite athletes, Olympic champions, and, to have people who maybe we've never heard of for the most part, but have incredible things to share with us, and that we get to keep learning. As we've said, we're kinda selfishly get to keep learning, and I am so grateful for all of it. And so I just wanna, ask you, Paul,
Mhm.
what were the, top episodes, I'm just gonna say top episodes for you, and it's so hard because what we don't wanna say is we didn't think all of them were great. They were all incredible. I even look back to, like, your recruiting episode that you did. It was just it was packed of really good stuff that I've already shared with a bunch of people. But what were the episodes
Mm.
that just stood out above the rest this year for you? And we're just gonna say
Yeah.
Marcy was a given. So, other than that one, like, that's a no-brainer, of course. So,
Yeah. That's number one of
can't
all
say your
number
wife.
ones.
Yeah,
Right.
you can't say your
Number one
wife.
of all number ones. In the event that she might listen to this episode also, I have to say her episode was the best in my mind.
Yes, yes.
Um, but it is crazy to go back and look through, just the different people that we had the opportunity to talk to and the things that we learned from them. And it is really hard to nail down, you know, which ones were, I don't say the best, almost in lining it up as to what was the most impactful for
Right.
me on the
Exactly.
year, right? I think that's kind
At
of what
this
I went
moment,
through
too,
at this
right?
moment in what
Yeah.
we're doing in life because it's hard to say like that, Marguerite wasn't a great episode. It was
Yeah.
awesome,
Exactly.
and if I was still coaching at a university, that might be one of the ones that I would mention, but it's not, and that's crazy. And then, JP Dellacamera, a guy that you grew up listening to, on television, like,
Yep.
wow, that's a great opportunity to speak to somebody and learn from a different resource and whatnot, just his humility and all those things that you get that you don't expect from somebody who I consider to be a soccer superstar, at least in our in
Yeah.
our in our country. But I narrowed it down to three for me, and these are the three that really stood out to me the most for multiple reasons. And I think Dr. Spencer, Jeff Spencer, was a great one for me. His story, another elite athlete who, teeters on that line that I consider. And I crave some of those relationships because I'm not wired that way. So I'm intrigued by it. And I'm blown away by people like that. And then seeing him take that into his career with other elite performers, right? Elite athletes that he works with
Yeah.
and just, how he speaks and his humility was a great episode for me and very encouraging in a lot of ways. So that's one for me. Another one would be Skip Gilbert that we interviewed. He's the CEO for US Youth Soccer. Really, I've known about US Youth Soccer my entire life, right? But to have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's leading that organization and really understanding what they're doing. And the one thing that just continues to stick out to me is just kind of part of their mission, which is to, in a nutshell, paraphrasing, to make the game enjoyable for everyone. And that I'm like, okay, it's not about developing youth players. It's not about this or that. It's about making the game fun. And I agree with that as an adult, you want to be able to still enjoy the game and not be burnt out. So just the heart behind, I think one of the most important organizations in our country when it has to do with youth soccer was encouraging to me as somebody who obviously cares about the game and cares about the people in the game. So that was a good one for me. And then probably the one that is
Wait, don't
probably
say it yet because I know what it is.
you do.
Yeah.
You want to guess it and I'll say whether you're right or wrong.
Yes.
Well, now that okay, who is it?
Well, no, because 'cause I'm gonna go my other 2, and then I'm gonna say, "Is this your number 1 too?"
Okay, okay. I
How about
like where we're
that?
going here. This kind of game
You
show.
like that?
Can you feed over some game show
Name
music,
that
Dennis?
guest. right?
All right,
And
who
two.
are your two before
Okay, so I
the
will
top?
say eh, my Jeff Spencer for sure. Like that was, I mean, I had 18 clips that normally it's about 9 that I'm pulling out. I had 18 that I had to cull down to the 9 or 10 for that episode. So that one was just so chock full of leadership goodness. Like the nuggets that we talk about there, it was like, it was probably what the early gold miners got in their pans when they threw it in the river. All of a sudden it's just full. That one was so good. And um so humble. Like this is a dude who is the life coach for Bono, you know? He probably got free tickets to the Sphere. People are dropping $600, right?
Yeah.
Um, Tiger Woods, Lance Armstrong, like crazy. Branson, like what? So, and he rides his bike like 60 miles one way, like, so 120 round trip every day. Just an easy ride down from whatever. Like crazy. Cool stuff. Great dude. Love that interview. Interestingly, like Skip was probably right on the edge. I love that interview, especially hearing him talk about his experiences outside of soccer that informed his experiences inside of soccer. Yeah, that story about US tennis where he talks about Andy Roddick and why could he not crack the top 3 or 4? And they just said, "Watch those guys play," and they saw different movement patterns because they all played different sports growing up. So even hearing that specialization conversation in that episode was really, really good. But I would say the other one that would be in my top 3 was, as you mentioned, like, I mean, Marguerite was a great interview. I loved the interview with Josh Glover and Andrew Simpson and Becky Burley and Amanda, they were so good, like, going down, Keely and JP and Steve Axtell at the beginning, Kerry Sanchez, like, all of them were so, so good, but Keith Tozer was my other top 3. That conversation with him was just, again, a guy who has been part of this game for so long. The number 1 draft, the first ever pick in the MISL was pretty cool. But hearing his humility again, go back to that word, like that, seeing these great leaders and how he brought his team into a bus and like to the senior leaders and like, "Hey guys, what would you do in this game?" And then have the coaches sit in the back of the van and just listen. And then do those things
Yeah.
in the semifinals of the playoffs, right? Like that was really cool. So the number 1 episode, I named pretty much every other episode. So am I right on who it is?
I think so, because I don't think you named this one.
Yeah. So I will say it's Graham Daniels was my number 1. Was that yours or no?
Let me open the envelope. Yes, it was Graham
Yes.
Daniels. Ding, 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 ding,
Yes.
ding.
Yes. So achieved identity versus received identity was the name of the episode. He talked a lot about that. I say this because it was simply, what episode did I recommend the most?
Well, that's what
And
I
it
was
was
gonna
this one.
say, is that I think most people that listen to this consistently probably would have guessed that this was our favorite episode, because I think we reference him in most episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else were you going to say about it?
Well, I think what it comes down to for me, when I talk about, I said, what am I identifying with, you know, during this phase of life and what we're doing and all that. Just everything that he like. One, I love his stories, right? Our storytellers are usually some of my favorite guests, because I love stories. I love hearing stories. I love wisdom
Mhm.
from guys that have gone before me and done amazing things. I love the stories and how he tells his story. And he has a great story, and how he's, you know, really taking his faith and merging it with athletes, which is what we're doing with Warrior Way, right? Like with the younger kids, it's like, okay, I just identified so much with his path and what he's doing. And I lean into to what he's doing, how he's done it, how God's, you know, grown his faith and grown him, and how God's multiplied him as a disciple through his industry. He doesn't work for a Christian organization. I mean, he does, but his club that he works for is
Yeah.
not a Christian club. But he is admired. He is a man of great wisdom and somewhat authority in his industry, and I just admire that. I'm just attracted to who he is as a man and somebody that I look up to and want to model kind of myself after as a Christian coach and Christian leader.
Yeah. All of that and the stories like he talked about, it was funny, like, just the
Yeah.
wit, the 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 amazing God stories there. Go listen if you haven't listened to that episode, like, this makes me wanna go back and listen to it again, honestly.
Yeah.
The wisdom is off the charts. The stories were off the charts. Like, all of it was so good, and even as he gives some examples of some of the conversations he have has had with atheists
Mhm.
and with other people and talking about the different, social things that are going on right now and people coming up to him and having questions and how he just has these humble responses. And then to hear, how he, played at the in championship. He's like, "Yeah, I was never that good. I didn't get to play in the Premier League." I'm like, "Yeah, championship's still pretty good." But again, that humility, but then as he said, that would get him into some rooms. But he then went and got his PhD because he knew that would get him into all the rooms.
Right.
And to know that, to be able to get in the Premier League room, you gotta have this. So I need to go get this. And but not be so he could be in those rooms, but because he knows that's his calling to be able to, as he's the director of Cambridge United, that'll get him into some rooms. So I love that idea as well. Like, folks, don't just rest on your laurels because it's good enough, right? As we talk, good is the enemy of great a lot of the times. And if God has something else for you, uh, and you need to do something else, then do that something else. So, not just for the sake of pride and whatever, but yeah. So, yeah, I love that. I love that episode. And I'm so grateful we were able to have that conversation. And as you said, like, people have gone before us to see how he got involved with Christians in sport back in the day, where there were like 4 Christians in all of English football.
Well, he
And
tells a story where he's talking to somebody and they're like, I think you're
yeah,
the only guy I know in the league that's a
yeah.
Christian or something
Well,
like
he said
that.
that. He goes, "Are there others?" And he goes, "Yes, there's
Brothers.
4." He says, "There's 4." And he named 3 and he said, "Who's the 4th?" He says, "You are."
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's when he's like, "Well, I gotta go do something about this." So it was just really cool. So go check out that episode. If you have listened to it, go listen to it again. Definitely worth it. And if you've listened to it, you know that I'm not just saying that. It actually is incredible. And if you haven't heard it, 100%, you know, go listen to that episode into conversation. So, all right. That 2 of the 3 we agreed on. I like that.
Yeah.
And then the 4th was, I mean, that was definitely a close one on that. So, all right. Now we're gonna go into our year-end recommendations. I mean, I have recommendations, top books. So why don't you do your books? Do you
Okay.
have books and, like, documentaries or anything, or just straight up
No,
books?
I stayed with books. I don't know that I
Okay.
did a lot of documentaries this year. I'm so far behind in so many things, the documentaries and even some books because we have so many great recommendations. I mean, folks, if you're not getting anything out of this, you're at least getting some great book recommendations.
Yes.
You know, one of our guests actually texted me earlier today about a book that she's reading that she thought about us. It's like, you guys need to read this book. So I don't want to spoil future guests. So I'll leave that. But I've got books. So I read, I read more books this year than I thought I did. So I go back and started looking because I document when I read, and I'm like, oh, I did read more books than I thought I did. So I actually did have to narrow it down. And again, like our guests, you know, I think even last year I was reading a lot of parenting books, that's
Yeah,
the phase of
right.
life that I'm in. But I would say I don't think I have even a soccer book. But I'll give you my three. All right. And they're not in any real order. but just things that I was going through this year that these were very helpful books. Winning the War in Your Mind, Craig Groeschel. That was just a fantastic book, and I don't know if you've read anything by Craig Groeschel, but just how he, you know, easy reads. I think even the audiobook, I think he does the own audio on his own book. So that's, I'll sometimes go back and forth from audio to print and go back and forth. And so winning the war in your mind is a great book. Just kind of how to think through processes and how to just manage your brain when the world could be a bit overwhelming. Another book that we read as the Marcy and I read together with our life group members was God Has a Name by John Mark Comer.
Mm.
Just another great book, just reminding us,
Mhm.
about God, and you know, really a very basic book about faith.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend that. And of course, if you're really into John Mark Comer, again, I like easy reads, very
Yeah.
funny, like like
Yeah.
interacting type of book to go through. So that's that one. And then the third one I'll talk about is called Range. And I think I've actually mentioned it on this podcast a couple of times by David Epstein. And really, we talk a lot on here about specialization, and the pros and cons, about it. The book dives heavily into, I think the tagline is how generalists are succeeding or doing a better job in
Why
a world of
generalists
specialists.
triumph in a specialized world.
There it is. You've got the tag. And it's a great book. I mean, it talks about like how we focus on guys like Tiger Woods, and those are the exceptions. That's not normal. And it talks about other guys. He's a tennis player. He talks about that, played soccer, played all these different sports, and became a great tennis player when he was like in his late teens, because of his other sporting thing that he did.
Right.
And so, we talk a lot about specialization on this podcast. And so I'd really just highly recommend that book. It's such a very well thought out and researched thing that he talks through when it comes to, you know, specialization, and how almost as a culture, we kind of run with it as being the thing to do, when in reality, research shows that it's not.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of my books
Yeah.
because you recommended it. I listened to it
Hmm.
and I loved it. I was like, "Amen, amen." So I'm gonna say I'm gonna put in this lists in the show notes. So I'm gonna just rip through mine because I have more, but I will put them in the show notes as kind of the top books, and check them out. I have more because I wanna let you guys know, like, we don't just give recommendations and not read them. So, I a lot of my recommendations are actually, or a lot of my top 10 list are actually books that were recommended this year or over the last couple of years or multiple times. So 3 of those books in my top 10 are the Joshua Metcalf books, Chop Wood, Carry Water, Pound the Stone, and Win in the Dark. Those have been recommended I don't know how many times on the show, or talked about, maybe not recommended as official recommendations, but talked about. So I was like, "I better read these." And they are. They're written in that fable manner, and amazing, great leadership books. They're so simple, as you talked about, simple, easy reads. Listen to them with my kids, which was the other bonus about them. Like, great things to listen to and talk about with my kids. Lots of great principles that go into leadership and go into being a great teammate. As I've talked about this tagline now that I'm kind of is my it's encompassing everything for these my players is lead and love well and be a great teammate.
Mm.
And I feel like those books go through a lot of what that looks like. A lot of it's the internal individual. To be a great teammate, you gotta put in the work yourself. But to be a great teammate, you also gotta care about your other, and you gotta understand them, and you gotta connect with them, and you gotta, do your best for them. So that was one. The other the other range was one, and then other ones that were recommended, one was Open, an autobiography by Andre Agassi. That was recommended, read that, amazing, incredible. I've already talked about that on the show. Another was Quiet Leadership by Carlo Ancelotti,
Mm.
which was so good. I am not a reserved person, but I learned so much about about connecting with players and connecting with people in that book. He is a guy who studies his players. He is a guy who does a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this show. Strongly recommend Quiet Leadership by Carlo Ancelotti. Not a, he has never coached Manchester United. So that alone should let you know that it was a great book, because I'm not just pumping it because he's a United guy. But Leadership as an Identity, Crawford Loritz, Patrick Gilliam recommended that book, and I strongly recommend it as well. So good. And what was the other one that was recommended that I will recommend? That may be it. Then other ones just that are great books. So these are kind of like Phil Dark recommendations that I read this year. The Captain Class by Sam Walker, The Hidden Force That Creates the World's Greatest Teams. Very, very good book. Great for coaches, great for leaders, just to see what are those things. And a lot of just research on, is it just being a loud person? Of course not. But, those type things. What are those misnomers? What are those things that we hear about? Are they actually true? Or is it just, something we wanna say is true? Boys in the Boat, it's as this releases, it's actually out in the theaters as a movie. Read the book first. Strongly recommend it. Such an amazing book about one of the I think I still will say it's probably my favorite book about sports. And it's about rowing, but it also brings in the 1936 Olympics. Such an incredible story. Incredible story. And then the last book I will say is The Life We're Looking For. It's a book by Andy Crouch, Reclaiming Relationship in a Technological World. So much of leadership is seeing persons, which is what he talks about in that book, not just seeing people. And super, super, super good. So, strongly recommend that book. The last thing we will do here on this episode is I'm just going to run down a few documentaries that I've seen this year that are well worth your time. The soccer ones are Beckham. So good on so many levels, not just because he played for United. His perseverance, his commitment, not just to the soccer, but to his family. Commitment of Victoria Beckham is something that was, because he did a lot of things that a lot of people would have left. Uh, I'll let you watch it, but she was very committed, or she is, and it was really encouraging. That Peter Crouch film is a fun one. It's about Peter Crouch, his story. Again, his perseverance, his resilience, commitment of a coach to him, even though he didn't score in 18 games as the Liverpool striker and they stuck with him. Things like that. Really, really good. And then one that's kind of a soccer one, but it's also talks about Wayne Gretzky, and it's Pele, Wayne Gretzky, and Jerry Rice are the ones it focuses on. It's called In Search of Greatness. And it actually uses the book the guy, what's the book he talked about? Oh, The Sports Gene. The guy who wrote The Sports Gene is very involved in that, and talking about it's not just genetics. And all of them pretty much to a person said, if I had to do the combine for my respective sport, I would have not been very well thought of. But Wayne Gretzky and Jerry Rice, I think, did okay in their respective sports.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the two were Breakpoint and Full Swing. One is about tennis, one's about golf, but it just goes into the inner mind of the tennis players in the tour and golfers on the tour, and very, very good. Again, learning from other disciplines, learning from other sports, both In Search of Greatness and then those two, super good. So, lot to do there. Again, could be some of those books you could get as post-Christmas gifts or birthday gifts or whatever. But any parting thoughts, Paul,
No,
on the year?
just a reminder, if people didn't get to write all that down, you'll have that in the show notes form.
Yeah.
But parting words, man, I've just really enjoyed doing this with you, Phil. It's been really a lot of fun. I'm getting so much out of it selfishly, but partner with you on this has been awesome. And I just am really grateful to the folks that are listening, that are getting things out of it. I just hope that we're being, a blessing to them as well. And obviously we talk about it all the time. We'd love to hear more from our listeners of what they'd like to hear or recommending guests as we enter into 2024. but 2024 is already looking bright for guests that we have lined up. And again, just thankful for that we get to do this and that people are interacting and I think are getting a lot out of it. So just grateful and looking forward to 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing in 2024 we get to do is the convention, which is coming up in 2 weeks,
That's right. Yep.
right? And, we're both gonna be there, and I am going to we have an ad, Paul, that I get
Oh,
to do an ad read. How cool is
let's
that?
do it. Nice.
So, folks, coming up is this convention, and I get to do this ad read, but before I do that, I'm just gonna say, go. If you're a coach, man, it's such a valuable thing. If you're on the West Coast like I am, it's finally on the West Coast. It's in Anaheim, and it's been a while. But here's the ad read. I'm gonna do this in here we go. Folks, this
Let's
might be
do
the
it.
first ad read we've ever done on this show, and I'm excited for it. Don't miss your chance to join the most eagerly awaited soccer coaching event of the year. Get a special discount with our exclusive promo code. Leadership 24 is that promo code. You'll receive the registration for $425. It's currently much higher than that. Experience the United Soccer Coaches Convention, an engaging 5-day gathering of the soccer coaching community featuring live full field demonstrations and enriching educational sessions. Join thousands of other coaches in an event that's becoming a yearly highlight. Connect with soccer's elite, including Javier Zanetti of Inter Milan, Laura Harvey of OL Reign, Jermaine Jones of Fuego FC, Paul Jobson of Warrior Way. All right, I didn't say that, but that's what I said. Leonard Griffin of Calman Soccer, Carla Thompson, San Diego Wave FC, among other renowned figures like Paul Jobson of How Soccer Explains Leadership and Warrior Way. You do not want to miss seeing in person. And are you looking to elevate your coaching experience? Join the Advanced National Diploma course when you register to refine your skills and enhance your coaching profile. Secure your spot at the discounted rate of $425 using the promo code we talked about earlier, Leadership 24. Hashtag Stronger United 24. How was that? Was that
And
good?
really good. That was good. And what's crazy, they need to update the script because Laura Harvey is now the U.S. Women's National Team coach,
Yeah. Well,
right?
no. Emma Stone.
Oh,
Not Emma Stone. Emma Stone's an
Hayes.
actress. Emma Hayes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. My bad, man. Can you edit that out?
maybe. I don't know. I probably won't. You know me. Um,
Oh,
all
people
right,
can make fun of me
folks.
all they want. That was
So
great.
I am excited about the convention. I will be speaking there on two different presentations, and very excited about that. One's on sharing your faith or how to incorporate your faith in your coaching, and the other is all about disc. And got some great panels for that. So, Paul, you'll be there with
I'll be wandering
SRUSA.
around. Yeah, I'll be wandering around with SRUSA and some other folks, and just want to if anybody wants to meet up and talk and share ideas, I'm available. Love to chat with whoever. It's a great event. Love doing it. So glad to get back out to it this year.
Yep. And I also will be there wandering the halls. We will have a booth there for How Soccer Explains Leadership. So stop by if you are there. And, and we will be there if we are not somewhere else. So with that, how you like that? Was that very
That was good.
non-committal? Yeah,
Mhm.
that was good. All right, folks. Well, hey, so grateful for each and every one of you listening. So grateful that you're taking what you're learning and you're using it to engage and to be able to be better, continually be better. That kind of Kaizen philosophy of 1% better every day. Hopefully, some days are 2 or 3% better. But if you want to learn more about anything that we talked about on the show, Warrior Way, coaching the bigger game, disc stuff, you can check all that out, including now these lists will be in the show notes at howsoccerexplainsleadership.com. And as always, folks, we hope that you take what you're listening on this show and you use it to be a better coach, a better spouse, a better parent, a better player, a better leader in all that you do. And you continually remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your 2023. See ya.